this was the last lecture, and therefore I have a lot of people to thank. You for attending the lectures, even though they were not necessarily as interesting as they should be. You were very patient and came repeatedly and appreciated it, and really gave me a lot of strength. And of course, the Bangalore International Center, Ravichandra and Raghu, of all the people, he was my right-hand man, everything. Anything I wanted, Raghu, I want this, and he was there. Next minute he got it. I have a lot of people. I have a lot of people to thank. And this being the last lecture, I didn't even prepare any slides. It's going to be like my whole class, whiteboard, and write on it and talk. So that's how it goes. I'll begin with something very, very earlier than colonial morality. Begin with Krishnadevaraya's empire. When the empire disintegrates, or about to, he had these warlords called Nayakas all over South India. In fact, the reason why Krishnadevaraya had favored Telugu is not because he really loved Telugu and his own language, it's because it's politically expedient to talk about Telugu. And all the warlords distributed over different areas for Telugu people. And here, in Madurai and Tanjore, those Telugu lords, they're called Nayakas. I call them warlords. Okay? These Nayakas became important and independent on their own when Krishnadevaraya's empire disintegrated. Okay? That's one thing. But that is historical. There is something more important that happened at that time. Both Tanjore and Madurai, the kings that went there, Nayakas that went there, acquired kingship in addition to that. They said the king was God. So there is an assimilation between king and God at that time. That's a difference that you do not have during Krishnadevaraya's empire. The beginnings of it I showed you last lecture, where, for example, Tenali Raman hesitates, ridicules King Krishnadevaraya for accepting the praise that it was Krishna. But that's not during the time of Krishnadevaraya. Something later it happened, and it was recorded in the folklore, in the oral tradition, as Krishna, as Tenali Raman was doing that. Now, importantly, I think we can take up the. Remember that Tanjore and Madurai, these are the two spots to remember, particularly Tanjore. Okay? And now, when king is assimilated to God, something very, very interesting happened. When the king is king, a Kshatriya, and Brahmana was there, both of them made each other. Brahmanas made Kshatriyas, Kshatriyas made Brahmanas. Krishnadevaraya is not a Brahmana himself, but they gave him the status of being a Brahmana again. So every king was not a high caste king, high caste non-Brahmin king. There is no born Kshatriya anywhere in India. And the Kshatriyas now have made Kshatriyas, they elevated the status of Kshatriyas with Brahmanas. So each one made the other right. And king said, I am God myself. What happened to Brahmin? Demoted. So Brahmin is no more important for this empire. Brahmin becomes relegated to a relatively unimportant position. And the most he can do is serve God. There is something other than that happening at the same time. If king is God, who would be the most really interesting people in his court? Who will be closer to king? Women, of course, because he's God. Therefore, women serve God better than anybody. And therefore, women become important. If you really observe that, in Tanjore and later in Madurai too, the important people, court poets, were women. For the first time in South India, you have, or probably anywhere in India, you have women as court poets. Rangajamma and Rapi, Ramabhadraamba. That's a very important difference I'm making here. King becomes God as a result. And once that has happened, what are these consequences? There is another very important thing that's happening which began even during Krishnadevaraya's time, as Kesavan was supported. The resources of the kingdom were largely in cash, not in earmark, particularly intangible. What does that mean? When you get money, income is largely in cash. Something very, very significant happens. Earlier, you were important in society because you were born in that particular caste. I'm in this family. My grandfather, my father's father, and all those people, that's how I'm important now. No. I'm important because I have money. I made money, and therefore I'm important. It's a very important sociological change that took place. So if you have Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, that organization, at least in your mind, the conceptual organization of society has completely been distorted. Because whoever has money becomes important. Now, Brahmana was no more important. Kshatriya and Vaishya, they become assimilated. Because it's the kings, the Nayaka kings that there, they were Balijas, most of them. And Balijas were traders. They sold and made money. So Balija becomes a king, which means the Vaishya becomes a Kshatriya. So once the Vaishya-Kshatriya relationship is erased, you have a real problem in your conceptual thinking of society. Are you with me so far? So what happens then? If a person becomes important because he has money, and secondly, a person becomes important because of this civilization of Kshatriya and Vaishya, major dislocation happens in the conceptual thinking about the order of the society. And the poets have to deal with it. That is why, in this time, the mythological themes that were already available to you from the past are going to reread them. Let me explain to you what that means. Violation themes are real. There are several. Chandra, falls in love with his teacher's wife, and Buddha is born. We know that before as a part of mythology. But now, the same theme is revisited, Tara Shashanka, and revisited with a lot of gusto, with a lot of joy. Hey, this is wonderful, they fell in love with. It's wonderful. They described the love affair between Tara and Chandra elaborately detailed. And in the end, of course, Tara is pregnant. Gods come. Sure, it's okay, it's over. But let her pregnancy be completed. Let the boy be born, and then they can go back. So the end is very comfortably, nobody is punished. End is very comfortable. So here, the Tara Shashanka story, which was earlier told with a lot of censure to Chandra and a lot of censure to Tara. Now Tara is praised and Chandra is praised, and elaborately detailed description of their love affair, including how they made sex to each other. These are the poems that were written during this time. One more. There is Ahalya and Indra. Ahalya, as you know the story, Indra coveted her, and Gautama was their husband. Usually, as you know very quickly, you have a question? No. Okay. And Ahalya says to Indra, hey, has the cock crowed? Indra takes it as a sign and waits. And when he himself became a cock and crowed, Gautama wakes up and goes to the river to take his bath. At that time, Indra comes, makes love to Ahalya. Gautama unfortunately comes sooner than he is expected, and therefore they were caught in the act. And you know these results. This story is retold in a number of ways in mythology. You can write about 6 articles on this, and we will talk about it later. But how was this story taken in this period? Because it's a violation theme. They were revisiting violation themes. They were rewriting violation themes within a group. So Ahalya Sankrantanamu by Samukhamu Venkatakrishna Panayakudu elaborately describes how Ahalya wanted Indra but could not get, and Gautama does not pay attention to her, and a whole lot of those things are there. And a Bhikshuni comes to her to visit. Oh, okay. And when she visits, hesitatingly, Ahalya tells her, you know what? I wanted Indra, but I should not say that. It's very, very dangerous if I say that. So, Bhikshuni listens. What? What's dangerous about it? You're married and you've only one man in your life? What's wrong with you? And you're not really trying to get Indra? That's nonsense. Does Indra know that you're waiting for him to come? No, he doesn't. I'm going to tell him. Okay? So Bhikshuni, as a matter of fact, tells him all kinds of things. What is good about being a woman? Enjoying sex. If you do not have that, you are not being a woman. So if you are a woman, this is what you should do. And actually one word comes. You have only one man in your life who doesn't pay attention to you? What's wrong with you? That is the kind of advice that this Bhikshuni gives to her. And in fact, in Tara Shashanka, there's one point I forgot to mention. Tara, when Chandra was hesitating, oh, it's not unfair to sleep with my teacher's wife, he says, what? There is a very, very important statement there. Impotent men who would not be able to satisfy their wives, to make sure that other men do not touch their wives, wrote in palm leaves that it's wrong to make love to another man's wife. Okay? Astoka Manisha. Okay? Tatakuluronu Prasiri. Parangana Sudira Papams. Okay? Please don't pay attention to stupid things. They are only palm leaves. You don't have to pay any attention to them. They are not Shastra texts. Why are you worried about those unnecessary palm leaves? Come, make love to me. So that's the kind of statements that are given to you in these texts. And these texts really appreciated by a lot of people. And South Indian school of Telugu poetry was considered to be a very highly mature period of Telugu poetry. Something happens. Just a little after this period, something also, I'll tell you, I forgot to say that. Because cash is important, who is important when cash is available? Courtesans. Courtesans have a very high status in society. Being a courtesan is not only not unrespectable, it's respected. Courtesans are poets, courtesans are singers, courtesans come out in public, courtesans make money, and they handle their own lives. But as a matter of fact, make a diagram and say housewife and a courtesan. They're exact opposites of each other. A housewife should be very quiet and should not think of other men. Courtesan should always be thinking of other men. Wife, she should try not to have another man, and if she's pregnant because of her husband, she should expect a son to be born. Whereas a courtesan wants a girl to be born. Okay? Courtesan, housewife, never touches money. Courtesan makes money and lives on it. She lives her own life. She doesn't have anybody, not need anybody to manage her life. It can go on and down. So there's the courtesan and housewife, they're exactly replicas of each other. Opposites of each other. Courtesans are the only people who can come out in public, sing and dance and write poetry. They're scholars. They're good poets. They're dancers. And then many of them were there. We really do not know exactly how courtesan culture flourished at that time. Not enough information is available. I have a feeling that courtesan is not a caste. Like, for example, later it has become Vaishya caste. I believe anybody who wanted to be a courtesan could become a courtesan. They're recruited into courtesan life, not born into courtesan life. It's a very important difference actually. And now, these courtesans have a social status, social presence, and there are all kinds of attention they get from other men. Now, during this time, there is a courtesan called Mudupalani. This Mudupalani wrote a very interesting book, and that book got a lot of problems in 20th century. It's called Radhika Sampanam. That's appeasing Radhika. Krishna, we know, is very closely related to Radha. Radha is a little older than Krishna, and they are lovers. It has been continuing for a long time. But Krishna has another girl, his own uncle's daughter, his own maternal uncle's daughter, which is very preferred marriage in South India, at least in Andhra area. Her name is Ila. Now it's time for Ila to marry to Krishna. It's a proper marriage. It's a mother, a maternal uncle's daughter, cross-cousin marriage, perfectly acceptable, and Radha cannot object to it. Therefore, prepares Ila to house a good housewife, how to love Krishna well, and teaches her in all the arts of love. And you have a very elaborate description of how Radha has taught Ila to be a good housewife, sexually satisfying, attracting her husband. Well, the wedding took place, and Ila was sent to Krishna's room, and they were enjoying themselves. But it's very, very difficult to Radha to accept it. She was outside. She never wanted Krishna have any other woman, and right in her house, Krishna is enjoying with another woman whom she herself had trained. That's the story. At the end of it, Radha was so perturbed that she sends her pet parrot to Krishna. Hey, tell him that what he is doing is wrong. She could not neglect me. The pet parrot goes there, but when she sees Ila and Krishna enjoying themselves very, very intensely, she could not interrupt them and therefore did not give the message to them. It goes on and on. In the end, the pet parrot finally tells Krishna that Radha is waiting for you. She is really pining for you. You have to go and take care of her. He suddenly remembers, oh, that's Radha. I forgot. Okay. Then he really goes to Radha, tries to appease her in a number of ways. I cannot summarize it because it's a very elaborate way of trying to appease her. And after an elaborate way of trying to observe fails, Krishna falls on the feet of Radha, and Radha kicks him with her left foot. Then Krishna says, oh, I'm sorry. I hope my foot did not hurt your foot. Eventually they make up, and then there's a very intense love making between Radha and Krishna. That's how the story ends. Retelling the story doesn't make any difference. It doesn't say anything about the book. It's really a powerful, erotic book. Now, that's exactly when 19th century comes, the British there, and there is a person called Viresalingam. Kandukuri Viresalingam, social reformer. He was the one who decided that being a Vaishya is a blot on the society. You should abolish all the Vaishyas. No Vaishya should live. Now, Vaishya is taken to be a harlot. She is not the same Vaishya as used to think before. Musician, public performer, poet, and all these things. Now she is simply a whore. She is described as a whore. Efforts have been made by a number of people, especially the men folk of the Vaishya families, who wanted to prohibit the Vaishya culture, who wanted to prohibit public dancing by Vaishyas. It's a very elaborate system. And when the prohibition took place, all the Vaishyas lost their job, lost their importance in society. They were treated as whores, and they were taken to court, and they were found to be doing what they used to do as business. Now it's very interesting actually for legal scholars to look at how once the law was implemented by British people, how it has to be twisted to make it acceptable and convenient for people who suffer from that law. Vaishyas now say, hey, no, we are not whores. We are God's servants. Devadashi. That was the word created to tell the court, we are not whores. So now suddenly there's a whole lot of Devadasis. Because court cannot deny that you could be a Devadasi and it's not illegal, right? And therefore they could not be sent to jail. So now there is Devadasis, and there is an Abolition Act, and they were trying to convert Devadasis into these whores into housewives. Try to give them something to do which is respectable, and try to see if they can get married and live a normal life of a wife. Wife who's subservient to her husband and all those things. There's a whole story that goes to it. It's not easy. There are books written about it, and one should read them. It's a very, very elaborate story. Now, when Devadasis, the Vaishyas become Devadasis because they were considered whores, what's the story now? At the same time, there's a new law prohibiting all sexually open books. So all the books that were produced during Tanjavur period, I was just telling you before, Ahalya Sankrandanam, Tarasha Shanka Vijayam, all those stories of violation themes, elaborately describing the sexuality, detailed sex, they were all considered now bad books. especially the two people who did that. Number one was Viresalingam, who unfortunately wrote what's called Lives of Poets. I told you in one of my lectures that the idea of writing a life of a poet is nonsense. But he was the one who created a life of a poet with a date of birth, growth, and death. And in the series of lives of poets, he came to Muddu Padani. He looked at the book. Yeah, it's a very immoral book. This should be proscribed. So he wrote there saying that all the things that are in this book are not only immoral, they should not be spoken by a woman. There are other immoral books men wrote, that's okay. But here is a woman who is speaking those things. Okay? A woman cannot use those words. You cannot hear those words from the mouth of a woman. And that's what they are. And in Telugu, it's a little grammar lesson here. In the first person, men are in one class, non-men in the other class. Non-men means animals, birds, beasts, and women. That's the grammatical distribution in Telugu. In plural, they're human and non-human. So in singular, men are in one class and all the other beings are in another class. So you can use the same pronoun for an animal, for a bird, and for a woman. There was some resistance on the part of the woman to be used by the same pronoun that was used for all the other animals and birds. So slowly people developed another pronoun to use for women. Viresalingam uses that other pronoun called Ame for all the other women in the book, in his Lives of Poets. But when it comes to Muddu Padani, he simply still uses Adi. Adi the it. It which is used for birds, beasts, animals and all that. And Nehru says, this is a bad book, nobody should read it, woman should not speak words like this. And it, she's a woman. Okay? And that was written, he didn't publish the book, he just wrote about it in his Kavi Jeevitamalu, Lives of Poets. There is a very interesting woman. In fact, Bangalore has something to do with it. She's called Bengaluru Nagaratnamma. Yeah. A woman who is in Bangalore, who lived in Bangalore, lived a great life in Bangalore, and she was a Veshya, a courtesan. Okay? This Bengaluru Nagaratnamma picked up the manuscript book in a very dilapidated shape, brought it, edited it, and published it. Published with a preface, denouncing Viresalingam. Hey Viresalingam, you have denounced this book, that Veshya should not say these words. Look, I'm a Veshya. Pativratya, living with one husband, is a regulation for a married woman. We are not married women. So there is no question of Pativratya for a Veshya. We can sleep with any man and there is nothing wrong. And I am a Veshya myself. And she belongs to my Jati. And she picked up that book and raised a number of questions. Why do you call this book an immoral book? Are there not equally immoral books in Telugu written by men poets? And you don't find fault with them? But if a woman wrote it, it's a problem for you? So with this very, very, what's called devastating preface, she published the book. Viresalingam was very upset. Viresalingam had a lot of power in the government. He was working with all the people in the government with some cooperation by them. He worked hard to get the book prohibited. So the government prohibited the book. And it was Viresalingam that was behind this prohibition order. All the books that were there in bookstores were collected and taken away. Now there is a big problem. There are people who support Viresalingam and there are people who take the moral side of the story and denounce Nagaratnama. Why this? Because Christians came in, and from their point of view, sex is sin. We're living in sin. We're born in sin. Not for Hindus. In fact, there is no part of the body that was supposed to be bad or immoral. There is no situation where a woman is described with all her body parts, including her pubic hair. Even goddess Saraswati, even goddess Parvati was described with these words. I had a problem actually teaching such texts in my class when I was teaching in Reddy College in Eluru. There is a story in Telugu translation where the king was going home very fast. Why was he going home very fast? Because that was the first day after the menstruation. He has to sleep with the wife that night. If he is supposed to have a good son born. When he is rushing home to be in time to sleep with his wife that night, there was this Nandini Dhenu, Kamadhenu's daughter, right there. But he didn't pay attention to her. Otherwise, he would normally pay respect to Dhenu and move on. But he didn't pay attention because he rushed to go and sleep with his wife. And Nandini Dhenu cursed him. Hey, may the result of what you're expecting may not happen. Why am I telling the story? I have to teach in a class. A class where there are both girls and boys. And how to teach it without causing any problems. And there are always students who want to make mess.
What year is this history?
What year?
What year was this story from?
This I was teaching in Reddy College in 1956, 57, around that time.
That's
okay.
important.
What was that?
That's important.
Yeah, 56, 57, around that time. Because a few years later I left the college. At that time, the boys and girls were the same class. Even though they were sitting in separate seats, even though there were two girls, they sat in one whole bench, and then boys were there. There are always students who want to raise a question. Hey, what does the word mean? Explain to me what it is. There are a number of words that if you have to explain, you have to tell them what it is. And if you don't explain, they won't stop asking questions. So how to handle a class like this without making a problem? That was a problem I faced as I was a Telugu teacher in college. How I handled it is a different story altogether. But still, these were the issues. Your books are this way. When they have prescribed a book, they made sure that all the erotic parts are removed from it and prescribed a book. But even then there are words. Even when they are describing a goddess, there are words like breasts and pubic hair and all that. So the best they could do to clean up the book did not really help. Why all this situation? Because suddenly intellectuals of India, beginning from Viresalingam up to C.R. Reddy was the next person, a very well-known intellectual, very well-known theoretician of literature, and he was known to be as important as, for that matter, Plato's Aristotle or something like that. It was very important. His book was read by everybody as the greatest modern Telugu literary critical work. And he had a tremendous power. And he, reading all these Telugu prabandhas particularly, dismissed all of them as unacceptable. How many of them? Quite a few. In fact, he has jokes to say. The poet who describes this situation when the new bride and a husband go into the bedroom, all the relatives leave, but the poet does not. He still stays in the room and describes for you what they are doing. That is the kind of language he used, how these books are obscene. So from C.R. Reddy onwards, books which were considered to be very, very good books in Telugu literature, interesting books in Telugu literature, were considered bad books. Now you have a whole new definition for the period where Tanjore and later Madurai was produced in Telugu literature. It's called Shina Dasha. This is the black period in Telugu literature. This is the rotten period. You should not let this. Real good period comes when the British government comes and starts having good books for you. In fact, what the British did was to encourage the writers like Viresalingam to write novels and other texts that could be used in a classroom. Because your Telugu texts are not worthy to be used in a classroom. They're all highly sexual. And therefore, we have to have new books written for teaching in a classroom. Therefore, they had Viresalingam write a novel called Rajasekhara Charitra. It's a horrible novel actually. And they gave an award to it. And that was used in classes. And a number of other things happened that way. So the British government entered the classrooms, entered Telugu literature, and changed all that and said, "These are obscene, don't do this." It is a very, very interesting move. That would not have been much of a problem if the poets and intellectuals themselves were not convinced that writing sex is immoral. As a result of indoctrination by Christian morality, I'll call it simply Christian morality, even though usually it's called Victorian morality, even poets and other writers got convinced they should not write about sex. And at that time, when the old books were reprinted, we were talking about this, anytime there was a word related to sex or whatever, there were dots in the book. I have books where whole pages are dot. Otherwise they'll be punished, they'll be taken to court.
Did it make sense afterwards?
Pardon?
From the earlier part, before the pages of dots, and the next part.
Yeah, but I'll come to that. After freedom, 1947 freedom, Prakasham, who was the Chief Minister of Andhra, removed that law. And therefore you reprint all these books without the dots. In fact, even texts like Kama Sutra were considered immoral and therefore now not printed. At that time, there is a possibility for printing these books and smuggling into India. You go to French territory of South India, where British law does not apply. So the books were printed in Annam, which is a French territory, and smuggled into area. And I have a bunch of books printed in Annam actually. They're very, very careful. You have to be really careful. This was how things were going on. Even now, Telugu poets do not use sexually clear words when they're describing a woman and things like that. But there's something else coming here. His name is Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore, even though he was writing in Bangla, considered to be a great poet, given an award as Nobel Prize, etc., is a highly colonized person. Colonized, completely converted by colonial morality. That's the reason why they have to develop a Brahmo Samaj, where there's no God, there's no name. If you want to read his Gitanjali, you don't get the name of God, just a nameless God. You don't get any kind of God is in it. There's no way of describing a woman and God, of course, having any kind of relationship. In fact, what you find in Tagore's book. It's not love, it's not Shungara, it's agape. So that much of a reformation of literature was possible by a great poet like
What is agape?
agape. That's a good question actually. Somebody here probably will be better able to explain
Opposite
it.
of eros.
Yeah.
It's a Greek term for the opposite of eros.
Yeah.
It's godly love. See?
That's right. God's Leela.
But a lot of Tagore's poems, which he dedicated to his sister-in-law, were very passionate.
Can you tell me one?
I mean, I can't remember the.
No, in fact, he never describes a woman beyond her face and eyes and hair. She never describes
But
a
there are
woman.
lots of allusions to the romance of, the dawn.
That's
and
perfectly all right.
and-
All that is there
Huh.
in a very, very cleaned up language. Okay? There is no description of a woman's body in Tagore's poetry.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's more the passion of the love and
Exactly,
the.
exactly. Love of heart,
Yes.
heart to heart. They don't even kiss. Okay? I can go on and on if you are talking about Tagore, but Tagore's influence is very much on Andhra. People from Andhra went to Shantiniketan to become students of Tagore. They came back, influenced by Tagore, and they wrote poetry where they were talking about a woman purely as a from the hair and eyes. That's where they go. No, they stop there. Okay? And purely, there's love between a man and a woman, there's heart to heart, and nothing more than that. No touch of bodies. That kind of poetry became very popular in Telugu. It's called poetry of feeling, Bhava Kavitvam. It was the reaction to earlier poetry, which was full of body. Right? So as a result of a number of things, the British importing of Christian morality, Victorian morality, lyrical poetry of Milton and, not Milton, Keats, and all those people, which was being taught in the universities, where there's no mention of body of a woman, and Tagore, who writes poetry without reference to the body of the woman. Telugu poetry also follows the same thing, and of course there is here Reddy, who dismissed all the earlier poetry as bad poetry, and most of the poetry. We have an acceptance on the part of Telugu people and Telugu poets that writing about sex is immoral. You can go to any temple, you can't avoid copulating men and women on the walls. You can go for any old book, you can talk about copulation between a man and a woman. A description of copulation is one of the many descriptions a poem should have. And that's what Telugu poets did. So now becomes a problem. Those things cannot be accepted, even though they were there in great poets who don't repeat them, who don't write like that. Great Telugu poets do not touch sexuality in the same way as they used to before. Now word comes prema. Prema is an interesting word. Okay? Prema, Telugu has two different words. Prema and kama. Both of them Sanskrit words. Kama is sexual love. Prema is a sexual love.
Correct.
I can love for my daughter, that's prema. I can love for my mother, prema. But love for my wife is kama. These were very clearly separated in Telugu language. Now for the first time, concept of prema was applied also to sexual love. Also, sexual relations are now called prema. Okay? So I love you, which is recently used by young men and women here, is prema is used. So I am lusting after you using kama is no more in the language. Earlier, there was a clear differentiation between prema and kama in Telugu literary as well as popular use. All this is because we got the conclusion with regards to Christian morality, Hindu India was obscene. We need to clean it up. Hindu literature has to be cleaned up, Hindu temples have to be cleaned up, stories about Hindu gods have to be cleaned up. There is no part of Hinduism that goes without being censured by Christian morality or Victorian morality. The impact is really deep and it still continues. It has not changed. I want to stop there so that we can have questions.
Victorian kind of prudery decided what is good, what is bad about India. He was talking about temples, representations on temple walls, etc. I'll begin by a quotation from a report that one of James Prince's roving engineers had published in the Asiatic Journal towards the end of the 18th century. He had visited the temple of Khajuraho, and from Khajuraho he reports that he saw, I quote, 7 Hindu temples, most beautifully and exquisitely carved as to the workmanship, but the sculptor allowed his subject to grow a little warmer than there was any absolute necessity for his to do. Indeed, some of the sculptures here were extremely indecent and offensive. So this set the tone for rejecting or chastising the kind of literature, sculpture, painting, etc. that existed in India. This is what clearly informed the understanding of literature also. When, for example, Monier Williams, the first Gordon Professor of Sanskrit in Oxford, the author of the most celebrated Sanskrit English dictionary, he had also translated the Shakuntala, a less known translation of the Shakuntala. Now he found fault with Sir William Jones's translation, which was based on a single manuscript in Bangla script, but Monier Williams had occasion to look at many Devatangiri manuscripts, prepared a critical edition and translated that. But there is an excellent introduction that he has written. I quote from the introduction. A literal translation might have commended itself to the Oriental student, but would not have given a true idea of the beauty of India's most cherished drama to general readers, whose minds are cast in a European mold, and who require a translator to clothe Oriental ideas as far as practicable in a dress comfortable to the European canon. A very, very polite expression that Monier Williams writes. And following this principle, I'll just give one example from the translation that he makes. Now there is this expression in the third act when Dushyanta goes to the riverside. He guesses that Shakuntala is somewhere here, seeing the footprints, he guesses that these are Shakuntalas because the hind part of it is slightly more impressed because of, now I use the Sanskrit expression, Jaghana Gaurava, that is the heaviness of the hips. Jaghana Gaurava, the heaviness of the hips. And Monier Williams' translation of the expression Jaghana Gaurava is because of the undulating gait. Now, because you are not supposed to speak about Jagana, you are not supposed to speak about heavy hips, etc. So he sanitizes the whole thing and translates that as this. No, this is exactly what we see in the later editions with English translation of all these texts. Now, for instance, until about 18th century, there was absolutely no problem with the entire text of Kumarasambhava. Kumarasambhava has been commented on extensively by many scholars. Arunagirinatha, Manjunatha, a large number of scholars commented on it. But come 19th century, and the 8th canto of Kumarasambhava is censored. That is censored because the 8th canto of Kumarasambhava deals with what happened after the wedding. Panipidana Vithera. Now, after the wedding of Parvati and Shiva, Bhava Sadhvasa Parigraha Kama Dohada Sukham Manohara. So it speaks about the Kama Dohada Sukha, which was extremely beautiful, Manohara. But how can you possibly translate that? So in Indian universities and colleges, where Kumarasambhava was a prescribed text, only up to the 7th canto would be taught. M.R. Gale's edition, now one of the best editions of Kumarasambhava that you have, not just Kumarasambhava, many of other works also. M.R. Gale's edition is only the 1st to 7th cantos. 8th canto is just censored out. So this continues. It doesn't stop with M.R. Gale. It doesn't stop with that. Again, since you made a reference to Rabindranath Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore makes a very interesting comment about Shakuntala. Shakuntala is a fallen woman. Shakuntala is a fallen woman because she goes beyond what is permitted of a Kulastri. So she is a fallen woman. This is the way in which Rabindranath Tagore says, and this way we can see how literature was treated. Again, in the case of painting, when we see these things, for example, but what happened is it goes beyond sanitizing the Indian mind in a particular way, telling the Indian mind what is moral, what is obscene, etc. It also gave a particular kind of impression about what Indianness is. So, a kind of Indianness is defined in the colonial writings, and that definition is accepted by the nationalist discourse. So, Indian nationalism demanded that you accept the Indian nationalism, which ironically was the antithesis of colonial reality, accepted everything that colonialism created. So it was the other side, and accepted everything what was there, with the result that the Indian society is a very civilized society. It too considered sex as sin, and later this was taken up by ultra-nationalists. And when M.F. Hussain, for example, paints Saraswati in the way in which he did, he had to, I don't have to tell you what happened to him. So this is precisely what happened. Kalidasa never had any problem speaking about the pubic hair of Saraswati. What is that?
Parvati.
No, Saraswati. Nabhi Sarastira. Nabhi Sarastira. Manju Romavali Bhushite. Charu Sambhashite. This is in Shyamala Dandakam, which is attributed to Kalidasa, to have this explicit expression. There is absolutely no problem. But when Hussain paints it, it becomes offensive. This is the result of the kind of prudery that was imposed, the Victorian prudery, where, as Professor Rao said, sex is sort of thought as sin. This is the result of it. And unfortunately, this is what we are suffering. What was presented by the colonial masters as India, taken up by nationalists, and now vouched by or authenticated by later sections. So,
there's one more addition to that. Recently, when you go to temples like Khajuraho, they are now attributed to the Muslims did that. Hindus did not. That's a new twist. You can see what BJP is going to do in course of time. So all the sexual images we had, blame it on Muslims.
But there is also another aspect to it.
Sorry, one second.
Sorry.
People have put up their names first. Okay, wait for the turn.
Professors, I wanted to offer an alternative reading, one pre-modern and one colonial. This idea that sexuality was suppressed is, to my mind, and backed by scholarship, not quite true. It was not suppressed, it was regulated. And why was it regulated? Because in the 19th and 20th centuries, there are new discourses of health, right? If you look at popular magazines in Tamil or maybe Telugu, you can find that there are these medicines that can be imported from England, which talk about strength and virility, and something that women can also, without leaving their house, order, right? So it is not a Christian morality, but these are new discourses about instinct and desire which can be found in medical literature. Second, I think there are also certain motivations for sanitization before the colonial period. Since we are in Karnataka, I will offer one very important example. The Vachanakaras, supposed to have lived in the 12th century. In the 13th century, we find the first hagiographies in Harihara's Ravali. That is where Allama falls in love with Kamalati. I mean, the name itself is very suggestive. And when she dies, he pines, right? But after the 15th century, you find as the community is coming into being, you don't find, like Lingayat communities in 12th century, but a new community is coming into being and a canon is being formed. Prabhu Linga Leela, which is written by Chamarasa, completely removes this idea of him pining for Kamalate. In fact, in that episode, he spurns her completely. He is not affected at all. So there are certain moments where a sanitization will happen because of certain motivations. These are the two suggestions.
I completely appreciate your addition. Does it approve that? That's very right. Actually, it's very right. That happened during certain periods, even before colonial impact. Yes, you're right. Yeah.
I looked up Viresalingam in Wikipedia, and he is described as a social reformer.
Yes.
Leaving that aside, I looked it up because I want to know that when he lived, etc. But some of the other people that you talked about, for example, Reddy, at best he can be described as amoral. The joke in the family was that Vajayantimala was one of his daughters, and that when he was principal of Maharaja's College, Mysore, his principal activity was running after as many women as possible. Now, I wondered whether some of what he said was at some level a reaction to his own personal proclivities, and therefore he had to make it out to be socially desirable that one didn't talk about these things, one didn't write about these things, etc.
It's very possible we do not know enough about the personal life of Viresalingam, of C.R. Reddy, and C.R. Reddy is supposed to have raised with Vaishyas themselves, and therefore that may be a reaction to the kind of things he's doing. So we don't know. We do not know enough about personal life of C.R. Reddy. We only know about the public statements he's making. About Viresalingam being a social reformer, it's very important for us to remember that he was more a Brahmin reformer than a social reformer. because he was Brahmin, he was reforming those groups of people who had to be ready to accept power on the British leave. There are lots of Hindus in India, not Brahmins, who are allowed second marriage for their widows. That he does not even talk about. So, I would call Viresalingam as a Brahmin reformer than a social reformer. Because at that time, somehow they thought Brahmins are the only society. There's a whole lot of other people to whom these things don't work. No remarriages were wrong.
He was also called the Raja Ramohan Roy of Andhra. And one of the things that he set up was the Brahma Mandir, as he called it.
Yeah.
I just want to share a story that Romila Thapar told me. She was wandering around Khajuraho admiring the sculptures, and she heard a tourist guide saying this temple was covered up with salt by the Muslim rulers, etc., till an Englishman came and discovered it to be Sahih. And apparently she didn't want to interfere, but she couldn't take it anymore. She said, sorry, this area was never ruled by Muslims. So he said, Madam, किसको हिस्ट्री मालूम आपको या मुझे?
But actually, when did sanitization of Hinduism, our stories, our themes, when did it start? Was it really with colonialism or even before that? Because
I don't think there is anything before that. There
but
may
after
be,
Khajuraho, is there any erotic sculpture?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
you can go to any temple, not Khajuraho, any small temple in the village.
Gopura of Padmanabha Swami temple in Trivandrum. The Gopura of Padmanabha Swami temple in Trivandrum, built in the 18th century. If you see the sculptures, you will get the answer to this question.
No, but it wasn't only the British, Victorian morality that brought this about. Or was it, a gradual process? I also wanted to just, two things. The way I heard the Mahabharata and how it's coming down the generations. When my mother told me the story of Mahabharata, the most scandalous thing was that Draupadi had 5 husbands. And she explained, she said, well, Kunti was cooking and she was very busy, and Arjuna came and said, oh, look, Mama, look what we brought in. She said, yes, share it. And children always have to listen to their mothers, so they had to share. Okay. But this generation, generations after that, are brought up purely on Amar Chitrakatha. And what are they learning from that? All the Asuras are black and all the Devas are white. What are they getting of our Hinduism?
Amar Chitrakatha is post-colonial.
Yes, but even that's what I'm saying. What caste structure?
It's not saying earlier it was not done. It was very clearly told that the Pandavas had to share Draupadi because mother said so. It's very clearly stated. It's not hidden.
No, but the most scandalous thing with that.
Thank you, both of you. I had wanted to ask you about Saundarya Lahari, which apparently the word meaning is extremely physical descriptions. I don't know about it. I wanted to ask you about it. I wanted to ask about Jayadeva and the Narayaniya, Bhattadiri, much later, who
Narayaniya doesn't have explicit sex.
Yes.
But the other two have.
Yes, because the Rasakriyya and everything is described. But perhaps the lyricism takes over as in Tagore. Just wanted to clear that with you.
Please remind me, restate for me the question you were asking.
She's here.
Oh, sorry. The question you were asking?
Jayadeva and Saundarya Lahari.
Yeah. Jayadeva's Gita Govinda was a big problem. Gita Govinda, even today, when you hear Jayadeva's Ashtapadis being danced by young women, they don't understand what the words mean. Okay, it's very, very Lalita Lavanga Lata Parasigrana Komala Mala Yasari Re. The kind of texture is so smooth, it completely hides the real meaning of it. And therefore nobody is bothered by what it is. Jayadeva is very explicitly sexual, but you don't feel that way because of the way in which the words are used. Saundarya Lahari is a different story. But Saundarya Lahari, you don't read it in public in dancing and all that. Yeah. So, you're right. In fact, when Jayadeva's book was, when George Keith wrote pictures for Jayadeva, they were not acceptable for Victorians. So there are lots of problems with Jayadeva. Even during the time he was writing.
Just to take off on her question, I know that she's talking about the Kannada literary sphere, but in some of your writings, you've mentioned in your introductions and afterwards, you've talked about people in the time that the text was written, let's say the 17th, 18th centuries, their discomfort with the courtesan's voice, some male poets. So I'm very curious about how you would see that discomfort in relation to the kind of discomfort that comes with, say, someone like Viresalingam.
What's the discomfort they were feeling at that time?
Well, that any king, with kings and courtesans, they buy and sell poets and all this kind of stuff, no?
Where was the discomfort at that time?
Haven't you spoken about that, written about this, in the sense that this idea of trading art for money, right?
Yeah.
I'm not particularly talking about sex alone, but the idea of trading art for money and the complex position of the poet, especially the male poet. I'm not necessarily talking about the courtesan poet. I was very curious, what was I'm not necessarily talking about the sex part, but I'm talking about the position of the courtesan was challenging for some men, wasn't it?
Not to my knowledge, until 20th century or late 19th century. No, I don't think so.
Shall I say something here? This is an anecdote, a very recent anecdote. About 40 years ago, I had published a paper on the Bhakti movement in South India. In fact, my professor, M.G.S. Narayana, and I together had published this paper, and it had created some noise because this Tamil Bhakti movement of Alvar Nayana, we had tried to lead in a particular way. In that, we were speaking about the various saints who were there. And speaking about Andar, we had said that this lady was raised by Mother, and he dedicated her as a Devadasi to this temple. It has been there in public domain for 40 years, but last year, a Tamil poet, one who writes film songs, Bairamuthu, gave a speech somewhere saying that Andar was a Devadasi. People took it up, he was taken to task, and he said, "No, I am not a historian, I am not a scholar. I took it from the article that M.G.S. Narayanan and Kesavan Veluthat had published." The number of abusive emails and telephone calls that I got, how dare you call our mother a Devadasi? Because Devadasi in the context of 19th and 20th century had acquired a very bad meaning. In the context in which it is said in the hagiographies of the 12th century, it did not have any such bad meaning. This is precisely what happens when we see Devadasis in the light in which we have understood Devadasis in the 19th and 20th centuries.
In fact, if you look at Annamaya songs, all the Shrungara poems of Annamaya are about 3 times as many as Bhakti songs. Okay? But today, the singers don't sing Singara songs. They only sing Bhakti songs. If you have a chance to read our God in the, you will see how explicitly erotic Annamaya can be in his erotic songs, in Sungara songs rather. But nobody sings them. They're all passed away, and we only get the Bhakti songs of Annamaya. It's very interesting for us to look at it. In fact, in Annamaya songs, all the Bhakti songs are put in the male voice. And the men are very worried about being men. They can't be closer to God. And they say, what can I do? Everything is bothering me, my life is very difficult. Whereas in the Shungara songs, where a woman is in love with God, that woman can tease God, can fight with God, can question God, and do all these things. Annamaya's Shungara songs are very, very interesting to read. And we translated some of them, as a matter of fact, in our God on the Hill. And people were not very happy we translated them. Okay?
So with regard to courtesans, there's a doubt that triggered, and it comes from the Kavya literature. So I would like to quote Mricha Katikam. In Mricha Katikam, we find that Vasant Sen is self-loathing herself, and also the friend of Charudat. He would say that you have a chaste wife at home. So we do find that women, the courtesan, in a certain sense, has the agency, the economic agency, but again there is a societal paradox in the way the women, the courtesan is projected. If she's self-loathing herself, and in this regard I would also like to mention the Vaishika Shasana, which does not allow a courtesan to fall into love. Her only aim is trading, like dealing with the economic activity. So I would like to ask, do the Telugu poets have something in contradiction to what the Kavya literatures are giving to us? Or is there a societal paradox which is operating universally, if we can say?
If I understand your question right, the story of Mrichikatika and Vasantasena. Mrichikata is a very, very complex text to read. Vasantasena has to transform himself into a housewife before she can be married to Charudatta. Same day, Charudatta, poor Charudatta, who has lost all his money, he has no business to lose money as a matter of fact, and he loses that, and he is given an opportunity to renew his life by marrying Vasantasena. That whole story is a different topic. Don't give social reality to the play. Okay? It is a different reason. Why? Because it's a prakarana and not a nataka. If it's a nataka, the story would be different. We can talk about it at length, but Vasantasena cannot be a real example of a courtesan. Okay? She's more like a converted courtesan, a transformed courtesan. That's not how.
Can I also add something to this? For instance, you cannot generalize from Mrichakatika. For instance, if you look at Kama Sutra, the ideal Ganika there, you have very elaborate details about the ideal Ganika, and the title, the chapter itself is titled Vaishikam. There, the civilized men or men about town called Nagaraka and the Ganika in the Vaishikam section. Kama Sutra, many people think that this is a textbook of eroticism, which is not. It is about civilized existence in an urban situation. If you look at this, you will see that Ganika was still an extremely respectable. The title of the chapter is very important. Vaishikam. Ganika is a very respectable woman, and she, the prescriptions there, I wouldn't say that these are descriptions. The prescriptions there of how to be a respectable urban woman, how to be a respectable urban gentleman, Nagaraka, then Vita, Chetaka, etc. You have. I assume you have read it, I don't have to go to the details. So, rather than taking this kind of creative literature like Mrichakatika, which has a very important political message also. If we look at texts like Kama Sutra, we can get a better idea of this. So when we say Kavya literature, don't generalize from Mrichakatika.
Sorry, before Abhijit speaks, I just wanted to say that one of the greatest assets of a concubine is that she's a Nitya Sumangali.
Yeah.
Wife can become a widow,
Right.
and she loses her status completely.
Right. Yeah, that's an Nitya Sumangali. That is why, as a matter of fact, when the king moves, there are always spacious in front of him. The space should be clean without being polluted by women who could become widows. and she is Muchasimangali, and so the space in which a king walks is cleaned by women like these Veshyas who are sitting around.
In fact, in Shabda Shastra, Veshyastri is supposed to be the best domain that is possible.
Yeah. Okay.
So the other day I mentioned we talked about Tagore.
Yeah.
Since you raised Tagore today,
Yeah.
I wonder whether you are being a little unfair to him. And I tell you, you probably are. And I tell you why, sir. There are two reasons for it. One is, it gives an impression that because he did speak of something, he's done something wrong. Now that's turning the argument on its head. That's one aspect of it, and I don't want to go into details of this. But actually Tagore, because he wrote of 100 things, he was a romantic poet to the extent that the beloved and God was the same, which is a typical romanticization of God and Godhead. But apart from that, he actually, to the extent that he wrote, he has written about historical occasions of courtesans in his poetry. His short prose, his short stories are very, very strong, including one which is very well known, the letter of wife, Sri Patra. It's a very, there are lots of short stories in this. But he, for example, he talks about Vasavadatta, he talks about courtesans. It's not that he runs away from it, but I think he just doesn't, he decides not to get into physical, what would today be pornographic, today's world would be considered pornographic.
That's the point I'm making. That's the point I was making. Yeah. I think we should.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.